last year I made I made this case of I just deconstructed Game Pass games on day one launch versus like other games, and there's a degradation drop off very quickly because to Rich's point, people sample and they move on. There's no sense of ownership of these games, is my hunch, right? So I download Doom: The Dark Ages, I give it 15 minutes, and I'm like, nah, not for me, and move on to the next one, right? Whereas in a previous world, you buy it, there would be the sunk cost of, oh, I purchased this game, so I'm just going to give it an extra couple hours because I have this like financial hook on the other end.
I
Or,
bought Transformers on the Commodore 64 for 10 quid, and it was the most dreadful game ever. And I still played it to the end because I'd spent 10 quid and I didn't have any more money to buy another game.
or, the other side of that, which is, I think, is people buy games all the time that they don't like, and then they just own them. Like, they just have them, right? So I bought a game, I gave it like 20 minutes. I'm like, this game sucks. And that's not Steam. You don't return it. You're like, yeah, whatever. And then you just sit on it forever. Well, it's still a sale. The sale's a sale, right? So
Well, now that GameStop's gone away, yeah.
yeah, like you're
It
just
used,
like
it used to be you buy a little game and you take it back and get some credit
Total-
for it. But
Well, I mean, they
thank
might buy
God that's
eBay,
gone.
so well, eBay Corp might have a word to say on that as they kind of extend their empire. But never say never.
Richard, I'll start with you. Can you kind of explain like what has happened with the whole exclusives things? I kind of explained how when I was growing up, I'd get an Xbox, I'd play Halo, PlayStation, Gears of War, Nintendo, Pokemon. What has changed over like the last 20 years?
I mean, honestly, I'd say not much. I mean, I still think the primary driver of console sales are exclusives. There are, the Scana just did a recent survey that showed that it's still the number one reason for buying a console. What's moved away from it is, as the industry grew from a Sega, Sony, Nintendo to Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, there became a whole different range of games, and Microsoft started with some pretty strong ones with Halo and Gears of War and stuff like that. But as the Xbox One era came around, they kind of fell off in terms of creating system selling software. Nintendo and Sony continue to have a wide variety of studios developing hits. And yeah, Sony, switched their strategy somewhat in terms of, we'll put it on PC a couple of years later. And obviously for multiplayer games where you need CCU, it was a no-brainer to put their games on other platforms. But, that's just additive revenue. It's not changing their structure of what they do. Microsoft, just struggled to create system selling exclusives. And so with Game Pass, they basically went broader rather than focused. So it's more quantity over quality. And so, I still look down and I look at the surveys, and the number one is I buy it for exclusives. Number two is I buy it for third-party platform games. So I buy it for NCAA, I buy it for Call of Duty, I buy it for Fortnite. But the underlying reason behind why I go one way or the other, even then, is going to be, well, I'll buy a Sony because I know that there'll be games from Naughty Dog and Insomniac and all these other studios that I'm going to want to play as well. So while they might cite third party as the reason that they bought the console, there's still the underlying fact that exclusive drive it. And obviously, Nintendo have never and will never change. They dabbled with a bit of mobile stuff, but people buy Nintendo platforms for Nintendo games. There's no other reason to buy a Nintendo platform because they create the greatest games in the world. And so, I don't think much has changed. I think Microsoft is trying to change the game, but I think they had to pivot into that position because they couldn't compete.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I'm totally agree with that. What would I add to everything you just said so eloquently? One, I think to kind of there was an era of Microsoft that was run pre Steve Ballmer, and there was an era of Microsoft that was run during Steve Ballmer, and I think you could point to a lot of things across that corporation that just went on fire, including the Xbox strategy, generally speaking, and that's when you see like a kind of dwindling of kind of quality, quote unquote, first party titles. I go back to even like broader, like if you to go to the exclusive side, like why do people download Steam Launcher? Well, they probably played CS:GO and Dota 2 and etc. And then they also then had a plethora of third party games. So like, why do I have BattleNet? Well, I probably played World of Warcraft or StarCraft online, and now I have a plethora of other options. I mean, or in theory, like people play devices because it's exclusive, and sometimes people forget this. Like they'll dismiss Nintendo as Nintendo. Like, oh, people just buy Nintendo to play Donkey Kong and Mario. And like, exactly. That's exactly why they buy the machine, to play Mario and to play Donkey Kong. And oh, they should do more to support third-party developers. I'm like, maybe, sure, I could see that argument if you're a third-party developer, but if you're Nintendo, you're like, no, we're here to make our machine for our games and our specs, and we invite you to also try to create art on our platform. And if you can't, you have other options. And they don't seem to really care about that, chasing this like third party like elephant, as it were, like white tiger. So yeah, I just think Microsoft decided to change the game because they felt they had no other choice but to try to change the rules. And then, I won't go too far into it, but like I think having one foot in, one foot out was a disaster for them. Like they didn't actually make a choice. They just tried to have their cake and eat it too. It just all kind of fell like a house of cards on their face, right? And now they're picking up the pieces and trying to figure out what to do next. What's next?
Yeah, so the idea is that like platforms would like, I think people think that if I'm selling a game, I'm trying to sell it to as many people as possible. So if I'm limiting myself only to PlayStation users or only to Xbox users, that's less profit. But at the same time, then we're saying that platforms want to sell their actual consoles. Like that's where the money is. Like it's not about getting a widespread funnel of people playing their games, or no?
No, actually, the business of a platform is to get people to use your platform so then you can monetize everything else on your platform on top of your own games. That's the business of a platform. So Sony loves to sell first-party titles, but their bread is buttered on the 30% fees they get from everybody else selling the games on the platform. But to be a platform, you need as many people on there using it as possible. That way you have a moat to defend, right? This is like, to kind of branch into another industry. What is Meta's secret sauce? They have billions of people using their platform every day. So when an advertiser gets mad at the politics of Mark Zuckerberg right now, and they say, tell him to kick rocks, he goes, oh no, you kick rocks because I have all the consumers on my platform, and someone will take your place and spend the ad money because my money train's not stopping. And inevitably P&G comes back hat in hand and says, oh, actually, we need your users because that's where they're all spending their time, because he's aggregated all that consumer appetite in his platform. Gaming is no different, just at a much smaller scale. Like PlayStation puts exclusives as the honey on the tree bark to get the bear to come to it to go, oh, I'll buy a PlayStation because I'm going to get Spider-Man. And then when they have the device, it becomes a sunk cost to go, well, I bought this device, I might as well buy more games on it too that aren't necessarily made by Sony because they only come out with like 3 to 5 games a year. So you're going to buy an Activision title, or at least before they were owned by Microsoft. You're going to buy a Capcom title. You're going to buy all these kind of independent-ish, like third-party publishers games that put on that platform, and then Sony makes its tax on that. That's the business, right?
Well, and I would say the one thing that has changed a great deal over the last 20 years is third-party publishers. So there used to be a lot more exclusive deals. There used to be a lot more signing up to, okay, I'm going to do this exclusively on Sony. I might do this exclusively on Xbox. And that's gone away. For a third-party publisher, the costs involved mean that scaling it to any one platform makes no sense whatsoever. You want to be everywhere and everything. So for Capcom and for all the other publishers in the world, Activision before they were bought, THQ back in my day, we put it on everything. You might do an exclusive window. Or there might be some benefit to buying it on a certain platform, to get marketing dollars, especially now, marketing has changed so much. So marketing on the dashboard and stuff is so important that getting prominence on the dashboard is important. So hell yeah, I'll put an extra bonus level or a bonus character or bonus skin in the game for Sony so I can get some prominence on that dashboard. But other than that, I mean, people want the game on everything. And, the resurgence of the PC market in the last 10, 15 years has been a huge driver behind that, because so many people are just now playing console games on PC because controllers have become a standard input method on PC now. So a PC and a PlayStation and an Xbox, honestly, under the skin aren't really that different anyway. So there's just a lot more acceptance on PC to play games on a controller that 20 years ago there just wasn't. You had a mouse and a keyboard and maybe a freaking massive Microsoft Sidewinder.
I mean, yeah, and that's the other side of it. You're totally right. It's the third party publisher, not owned by a platform, has all the incentives in the world to put on every platform they can, assuming the cost to put on that platform makes sense. That's why Nintendo has always been so hard to put games on, because they don't really have the most modern hardware. So you're basically kind of degrading your game to put it on there, and people don't want to do that because it's too expensive and you don't make the money back. But like that aside, people need to make their money back, right? So you need it to be as many places as possible, sans any sort of exclusivity window you might get. Like I think Square Enix is probably soul searching right now on, was the Sony deal we have with Final Fantasy and our titles the best strategy for us to maximize people playing our game, or should we try to find a way to shorten that window? Like I think, and you're probably like, yeah, you probably should shorten that window because you're not going to get that. Like you're gonna have to spend your marketing budget like 3 different windows. It doesn't make any sense. You'd rather spend it all at once, get the players on whatever device they own to maximize your return, as opposed to thinking about like, we have this launch now on PlayStation, and then in 12 months we'll have our launch on Steam. Like that's just multiple marketing cycles, multiple investments, multiple ramp ups that just don't make sense in the modern era of gaming if you're not owned by a platform. But if you're Naughty Dog, you got one place, and it makes no sense for Sony to put it on Steam. So when they called and said we're pulling that back, I'm like, yep, you should. You don't want to devalue your IP by giving people the assumption that if they wait long enough, it'll just appear on Steam.
And I think, one of the things with that is that if you look at the return on investment that they've got from those PC ventures, it's just not enough to justify it. I mean, there's this huge, what people don't understand is the huge amount of cost there is involved, not just importing it. That's actually the easy part. But in terms of opportunity costs, manpower costs of just having to focus on doing something else, whereas normally that team would just go on and do, the next game. And so, there's a whole machine that's working behind the scenes to get the game onto Steam a year and a half later, and it's just not worth the trouble. Because people who wanted that game either have a PlayStation and played it, or they may dip into it on a sale at some point, but they're not going to pay full price for a game in 2 years' time. But I think the day and date issue is the one that's kind of vexed Microsoft to a lot of extent, because I look at things like Indiana Jones, and to your point, Colan, it kind of didn't do very well on PlayStation because it came out 6 months later. I mean, why did they not release that day and date? They had to remarket it. They didn't really. They just put it out and did a load of press releases on it. So they didn't really push it on the PlayStation. It's a great game. I mean, it's a lovely game. But, they lost all the momentum of it. But when you launch it on Game Pass and you essentially are giving it away free, it's really hard to make a case that somebody should pay $70 for it at the same time. And that's kind of the little snooker situation I think they found themselves in with Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, the only IP of Game Pass that I think probably increased in value because it was free and lower friction was Forza, because I think that genre of game, most people wouldn't buy it at a premium price point. But if it was just there, they're like, oh, well, I'll pick it up and play a car sim game for a half hour. And like, blown away. These graphics are great. I'm having a lot of fun. So I think that IP saw some uptick.
Horizon worked well because it's a completely unique game. It's something that's totally underserviced on the PlayStation. I mean, there isn't an arcadey racing game like that on the PlayStation. And it's the best of the best. It's a fantastic game. So, I'm not surprised that did well. Obviously, the Elder Scrolls stuff and some of the Bethesda stuff that's come around and done okay, that makes sense. Although, again, that stuff is really traditionally PC gaming. It's not really console gaming. But everything else, that's done under 1 million, under 750,000 units, I mean, that's just terrible numbers for games like Doom.
I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of where the other side of it is, like the devaluation of what Game Pass has brought on their own first party titles. So like, I got to think with their new leadership, they're already signaling they're going to rethink a lot of what they've been doing under the Phil Spencer era. And that guy's going to have so many buses driven over him over the next 2 years. Like all this would have been great had it not been for him, and that's going to be the framing, or as they try to kind of shift focus, narrative, and all that right sort of stuff, right? But going back to the Oblivion launch on day one on Game Pass was a colossal disaster, not because it didn't do well, it did phenomenally well, because the money they could have made off that game could have offset a lot of the misses that Bethesda had in the same year. And because they didn't have money to offset those misses, they end up laying off people for magic money they don't actually have in their pocket. Microsoft gives them a pat on the back and says, good job, you drove engagement this month, but where's the money? You're like, well, you took the money and you called it hours. And you're like, well, yeah, hours doesn't equal salary. So we're just going to cut people now. And I think that's the side that most people don't really talk about. I'm like, stop giving away a game for free. Maximize the window on the onset. So that's, I also think, is part of the challenge that Game Pass, on top of the fact that you're right, it's on PC. So like, it's like, oh, you bought Bethesda, what are you gonna do with that? Put it on Steam. Like, okay. Like, then the modding community is gonna be like, great, I'll just play this on Steam because I
Yeah.
want to mod the heck out of this game. That's the magic of Elder Scrolls. It's just like, it's a modder's paradise, right? Where people just do what they want in that game and kind of mod it to, death, and or to forever life cycles. And like, you're not gonna win them over to buy an Xbox because they can now play it on Steam. And I made this point in my newsletter today, and I'll just kind of make it here and I love your thoughts, Richard. Like, what's the downstream impact of this? We have Strauss out there basically doing a watch out Wall Street. I don't want you to get too excited about Grand Theft Auto 6. So I just like spent a lot of time digging into this. Like, okay, what from my end, I think it's gonna blow the doors off of everything. But if I had to be like, what's the risk here? You gotta dig into the console unit numbers. Xbox 360 versus where it is now, which is a similar life cycle on their devices, has sold half what they did. So the TAM for Grand Theft Auto 6 by devices is going to be smaller today than it was when GTA 5 came out. Not because Sony hasn't outsold its previous generations. Oh, it blew past that. So Sony's doing their part. It's because Xbox decided to devalue their entire ecosystem, which are the 1 and 2 platforms that, GTA 6 come out in the onset. And the other side is like, well, then how long until it gets on Steam? Because they're going to have to try to recapture players there. And like, that's, I think, the thread he's trying to needle, because I think he sees those numbers. So it's like, we have to win more share of voice in the console universe at launch than we did a decade ago or decade and a half ago, because of nothing of our own devices. Like, we didn't do anything other than just make a phenomenal game, sell 200 plus million copies of it, is always in the top 10 of selling games on every device ever. And because Xbox decided to not have a business that worked for 10 years, we are in the spot where we are. We're gonna probably we're not gonna see the sell through that I think the market might think they should have, because Xbox doesn't have as many devices in market. Which is, there's nothing they could do about it.
What happened with the Xbox console, like, over time? Because it used to be what Xbox 360, it kind of beat out the PlayStation 3, if I'm not wrong. Like, the Xbox was very
It
popular.
didn't actually.
It didn't. Okay, so
End of life cycle. The PS3 just beat it worldwide, but that's because
okay,
Sony has
so
entrenched places that Microsoft could never get to, Japan especially.
Japan, I said Japan.
But I mean, yeah,
well,
it started off. The Xbox One started off badly because of the whole DRM issue, and the Kinect issue, and the selling of it as a entertainment device and not a gaming device. They positioned it badly. But at the end of the day, the PS3 started off as a disaster as well. It was massively overpriced. It didn't have any software. Everything comes back to software. You have to have games. So the biggest problem that's happened to Microsoft is they've had 12 years of not a single system selling exclusive game that anybody cares about. Halo Infinite was okay, and it's not a bad game, but it kind of pivoted towards this gas model, which wasn't Halo. Halo's mechanics don't really support that. And so it fell off, and it certainly wasn't a must-have. And then you look at the rest of their libraries, it's not like their studios are not incredibly talented. They are. They just haven't produced games that make you go, I want to buy that. And more to the point, when you spread it across, Sony have a handful of studios, 6 or 7 studios where you can go, okay, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Sucker Punch, Housemarque, Polyphony, Team Asobi, Guerrilla. They've got this bunch of teams that will produce Game of the Year nominated projects. And so when you look at a PlayStation, you go, well, I'm going to get 6 or 7 Game of the Year quality games. Whereas you look at Microsoft and you go, I don't see it,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, I have not booted my Xbox X in like 2 years
Yeah.
because there's no reason to. That's a problem.
I mean, like, I agree. And like, it's almost like the strategy that Sony took has been just like underappreciated, where they wouldn't going buying the biggest fish in the world. Like, I'm not saying Xbox or Microsoft buying Bethesda and buying, Mojang, which actually is probably the most savvy acquisition they did make, was buying Minecraft. They just didn't make it exclusive and they let it run everywhere. But that was a savvy acquisition. But even like Activision, whereas Sony just bought smaller size studios, mid-sized studios, who already made games for them that they knew clicked with their audiences, and said, we like our relationship. You made some exclusives for us, or some, like, and now we're going to buy you and kind of support you as part of the PlayStation family. And like, they have a wide range of kinds of games they make, right? So it's not just like I can get a certain genre of game from one of their own and operate companies, or I get another one from another one. Like I like the Spider-Man games, and so I'm there for Insomniac. Thinking Wolverine is a day off for me. I'm like, great, can't wait. I gotta play this when my kids aren't home because they can't watch me slice people's faces off as Wolverine. But I'm like, not for my 6-year-old. It won't be 7, but like, yeah, not for him. But I'm excited about that, and I'm not gonna play Soros ever, but I can respect it exists. I'm like, oh, good. I feel like they support.
Awesome. Play it. And it's funny
Right.
because where Sony diverted from that strategy and bought Bungie, it failed.
Yeah.
And, the whole games as a service thing, which just isn't their wheelhouse whatsoever, with
Yeah, they took
Concord and everything else, is where they've fallen down. They stick to what, Nintendo's very good at sticking to what they know. And they know family entertainment, and they know evergreen brands, and they know, incredible gameplay. And so that's where they stick, and that's where Sony should have stuck. And, the only problems Sony have within their ecosystem is generated by, trying to go outside of their core competency.
Yeah, everyone wants to chase the thing that like is primarily living on PC, which is these gas games. Like, well, we could bring that on the console experience, and it just doesn't work out. Like I love Nintendo, and I'm pretty public about my just admiration of their business model. But one thing I think I really appreciate what they do is they don't chase gaming trends until they're like almost old. They're like, gosh, everyone's got an open world game now. Let's just step into it with Breath of the Wild. They're like, oh wow, thank you, welcome to the party, Nintendo. But open world games are a new thing. They just decided to wait and put their spin on it until the genre had fully kind of formed itself, and then they jumped into it and they expressed what an open world Zelda would be, and the rest
And
is history.
same as Splatoon, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Splatoon was kind of like their family-friendly way into getting into the shooter market.
I mean,
My
and they're
kid
just
loves it.
right. And you get a very open platformer in Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is the evolution of Odyssey. Obviously, Odyssey to me is more on rails. Donkey Kong Bonanza is definitely not. And the genius of the design of that game is it's meant for me to hunt down the most hardest to reach bananas. I can also pass the controller to my 5-year-old at the time and say, get a banana. You know what he gets in like 3 minutes? A banana. The other thing that's unique of like how they've built their ecosystem is they're really smart. They almost like that game reminds me of mobile gaming mechanics where the dopamine hit hits you every 2 minutes, whereas like you can walk any direction in Donkey Kong and find a banana, get that dopamine, like, oh, punch a banana, oh, banana, right? But it's almost like from mobile gaming, they kind of inspired by shorter loops that give you that dopamine kick that can like bring into their own Nintendo version of that. But like, I could never go on a rant about any Xbox side. Like, I could go on and on about Nintendo, very specific games they make and how they uniquely kind of craft them to kind of lean on trends in the industry, but make them uniquely their own. I could do the same for Sony, for better on a lot of their first party single player games, for worse on the live service stuff. But like Xbox, I'd be like, I don't know what's unique about you guys. I could not put into words because I don't think there is anything unique to what they do.
I mean,
Wait,
with
go ahead.
the acquisitions they made, they became the largest third-party publisher in the world, and they should embrace that. I mean, they should act as the largest third-party publisher in the world. There's no reason and there's no financial benefit for them to shut off PlayStation or shut off PC. It doesn't make any sense. So they've kind of put themselves into a position where being a hardware manufacturer is almost a side gig, to the fact that they're the biggest third-party publisher in the world.
Well, I think with that, Richard, then walk me through the logic of starting Game Pass. Like 35 million plus subscribers, I think. Like what was the inception, the idea for it? Because it feels like, yeah, if hardware isn't going to be our USP, then let's get loads of studios, get a bunch of games, and put it all like a Netflix style subscription model.
Well, and I think that's where it came from. I mean, it came from, hey, look what Netflix is doing, and can we do that too? And I was very supportive of Game Pass as an idea of a supporter of indie games. I think if it was $5 a month or $7 a month, and it was just indie games, and they were funding indie games and finding new talent, it would be fantastic. But what they've done is, they've got all these first-party games that they put on there day one, and they're devaluing games as a whole. They're devaluing developers. That it has a knock-on effect on other platforms for people who go on Game Pass. And at the end of the day, the difference between Netflix and Game Pass is that I can consume a series of Daredevil, in a night, or in 2 nights, or in 3 nights, and be done with it, and then I can move on to the next thing. The rate of rapidity of going through things is very quick. Whereas, if I download, Ghost of Yotai, and I'm playing it on my PlayStation, that was 70 hours for me to finish. It took me weeks. So
Yeah.
why am I paying so much for a month when I can only get through a very limited amount of games at any one time? The whole construct of Game Pass is to put you in a walled garden that you don't go outside of it. This is the sort of unsaid part of it. Their whole philosophy behind it was, if you're in Game Pass, you will never buy a game outside, which is why it's kind of so damaging to the industry as a whole. Is their idea is we'll just keep you going from one to the other, and when you have a download involved in that, it's kind of a reason to play the game. So, I've spent 20 minutes downloading a game because it's 10 gig, 15 gig, 20 gig. I'm going to give it some time. If you can stream that, which is kind of where they're going and what's next, and you're just flicking from one game to the next, I mean, the data is already showing Xbox players play more games for less time. You basically just flip from one to the other. Don't like that. It devalues everything that we build. And it's just, it's not conducive, but it makes sense, right? I mean, it's like, okay, if I can capture people inside that walled garden and keep them there and keep them paying 20 or 30 bucks a month to me, I make a lot of money. And everyone else be damned. I mean, I'm not working. Microsoft doesn't have to work for a developer. They're working for their own profit margin. So that's where the philosophy came from, and it worked to an extent. I mean, they've got somewhere between 30 and 35 million people doing it, and
Yeah.
it makes money. But when you've got a studio system the size that they have to support it, then the financials don't look so rosy.
Yeah, I've so like I don't have the data in front of me, but I've definitely made the data case. I write long-winded newsletters on LinkedIn, so go read any of them. Called Patch Notes. They start off short and then they get longer and longer as I keep them on. But like last year, I made I made this case of I just deconstructed Game Pass games on day one launch versus like other games, and there's a degradation drop off very quickly because to Rich's point, people sample and they move on. There's no sense of ownership of these games in my hunch, right? So I download Doom the Dark Ages, I give it 15 minutes, and I'm like, nah, not for me, and move on to the next one, right? Whereas in a previous world, you buy it, there would be the sunk cost of, oh, I purchased this game, so I'm just going to give it an extra couple hours because I have this like financial hook on the other end.
I
Or
bought Transformers on the Commodore 64 for 10 quid, and it was the most dreadful game ever. And I still played it to the end because I'd spent 10 quid and I didn't have any more money to buy another game.
Or, the other side of that, which is I think true too, is the thing that's not said a lot in the gaming industry is people buy games all the time that they don't like, and then they just own them. Like, they just have them, right? So I bought a game, I gave it like 20 minutes. I'm like, this game sucks. And that's not Steam. You don't return it. Like, yeah, whatever, and then you just sit on it forever. Well, it's still a sale. The sale's a sale, right? So
Well, now that GameStop's gone away, yeah.
yeah, like you're just
It used to be you buy a little game and you take it back and get some credit for it. But
well, I mean, they might
thank
buy
God that's
eBay,
gone.
so well, eBay Corp might have a word to say on that as they kind of extend their empire, but never say never. But so like that's like so the economics of Game Pass is always like kind of just like caught me out of drift. I'm like, it makes sense for indie games who are lacking discovery. They can offer you discovery in Game Pass. And so you have these titles that do really well in Game Pass that get a bunch of audiences on them, like Rematch last summer. It's like an arcade style soccer game. Makes sense for being a Game Pass game because you're gonna, I'm sure some of your dev costs is offset by Xbox paying you to be on Game Pass, and by proxy you get a bunch of audience. Same with Clair Obscure. I think part of the success of that game was the fact it was on Game Pass. So it's like, yeah, I don't know who this developer is. I never heard of them. It got good reviews. It's on Game Pass. I might as well give it a go. And I think for those kind of games, Game Pass makes sense. But if Expedition 34, which it can't be called that if you don't think about the story, that'd be impossible. But like assuming Expedition 34 or something like it is the next game, there's no world in which it should put it on Game Pass. They're ludicrous. They should sell it for full price. People will buy it because it's a game of the year, because it has like a whole bunch of fans behind it now. And so to me, it's like makes sense for smaller size studios looking to break through and have a point of leverage of discovery, but it doesn't make sense for known IP. And that's always been my take. Like Doom the Dark Ages fell off a cliff in engagement because people tried it and they left.
I mean, it makes, the way Game Pass makes sense for a lot of mid-tier publishers because you can basically get all of your dev costs paid for by Microsoft day one. So everything after that is gravy. And so again, there's less concern about the knock-on effect of whether that harms it. But if you're basically trying to use that day one. When you're introducing a new IP, you literally are trying to say, beachhead this IP, get some people playing it, and then the second one will be more successful, and the third one will be more successful. And that's how you build up an IP. So getting the exposure of Game Pass and a lot of players and getting your game basically paid for before you even start the second one, it's absolutely an incentive. And there are many mid-tier publishers out there who are doing this because, it totally de-risks their investment. If it breaks out after that, great. If it doesn't, well, we're all paid for. So it's fun. And they may not fund the sequel if that's the case.
Totally.
But that's where it works.
So, and then the other thing you mentioned, Richard, is just something I have come to, and I think this is where, I don't know, is it a direction they're going in? My gut tells me yes, just given the people that keep bringing in on Xbox in the post-Sharma world. But like your ecosystem you described, where I play a game for 5 minutes, I go, not me, and you channel switch. That ecosystem's ripe for ads, and so to me, and at the platform level, so I hate ads in games unless it's like naturally fit there, like a FIFA, EAFC, or an NBA 2K, or ads in the NASCARification of sports. Makes sense to have ads there. I'm not really gonna like knock that, but no one wants to play Oblivion to have an Old Spice ad interrupt me as I'm like swinging my broadsword, right? So like that'll never work. So that's the other side of it. So, but what would work is if a platform like Microsoft has and Game Pass builds an ad ecosystem in there and then drops the price to free. People love free. So now, hey, just come play Game Pass, play some older titles that are on here, watch ads as you jump between them, watch ads as you load up your machine. We won't serve ads in games. We won't force timeouts, at least initially, we'll say, but like we won't do any of these things. You just consume as you consume and play. So now you're actually monetizing the amount of time they're putting in there, not the amount of new things they're playing. So they could play one game forever. Great. You'll get served ads. You could play 10 games in like an hour. Great. You'll get served ads there too. Like everyone, like that kind of ecosystem makes a lot more sense to me, which is why I would not be shocked if they find their way in that world in the next 2 years as they kind of set up shop. But other than that, the business model of Game Pass is doomed to fail. They either need to decide how to window content in there, like PlayStation, which they do now. So just look at your competitor and say, how are they windowing their old games in there? Oh, they wait like 9 months to a year before you see Spider-Man on PlayStation Plus or whatever. Like, okay, great. Follow that model. And I think Sony knows that model because they are a film studio, so they know what windowing is. They've been doing this in old media forever, so people understand this model. Or you find a way to basically not put your premium games on there, sell them at full price, and just have it be a place for mid-sized to indie games to kind of live there to drive, exposure and build relationships with these developers. And maybe Microsoft, they're savvy, goes and starts buying these smaller sized studios to kind of bring them in as they're making their first like kind of hit game. Like, oh, great, we'll support you in the next one, and basically copy Sony's model, which I think is too late for. So that ship is sailed. I don't think they're gonna buy anything else on that side. I don't think the UK would let them buy anything else on that side. Like they're tapped.
Well, but they started the whole Game Pass thing by buying smaller studios, right? They were looking for a quantity of games, which is where Ninja Theory and Double Fine and Obsidian and all these sorts of people came from. That was their first foray into the Game Pass ecosystem. And then it kind of, upped the ante with Bethesda, which I never quite understood because Bethesda to me was always a mostly PC company. And then obviously the Activision acquisition just put an incredible burden on them and incredible stress on them at the end of the day because, you're basically trying to give away the crown jewels of a business that was phenomenally successful. It's hard.
While,
It's a really hard balance.
while owning a mobile gaming company, they don't know what to do with the King. Like, and all the money comes from King. What do I do with this? Like it just.
Hey, but King's great because now they can go by daily active metrics and they include King in it. So if everyone playing Candy Crush counts as an Xbox metric.
That's so true. That's so funny. Oh, Kings. This is like, what are we doing here? Then in Mojang, man. Mojang, what are we doing here? That's the one that always gets me with that Microsoft's portfolio. We talk a lot about all the studios that honestly pale in comparison to the size and girth of Minecraft. They never talk about Minecraft. Like, what's the news about Minecraft, Mom? Like, you get more news out of NetEase.
Biggest game in the world, but biggest IP in the world, $1 billion movie.
$1 billion movie.
But Minecraft is a platform into itself, right? I mean, they're not going to throttle or cut off that in any way because it's so phenomenally successful. I mean, I think I've bought that game 7 times.
You have 700 million users in China alone playing that game, and you're like, but they don't talk about it. I just find it to be so just humorous. So you're like, okay, so we just pretend we don't own the most valuable thing in the world. Got it. These are not the droids you're looking for, is maybe the stance they take, right? But don't look here. But anyways, otherwise maybe they have the same problems that Roblox is having with kids and kid safety, and they just don't want to step in that bear trap.
Can I introduce the concept that Steam wanted to do this black box where you could play any game you wanted? Like, they talked about it, then it was in the news and it went out, and I stopped tracking it, but that just feels like a kind of a pretty big competitive
GameCube?
stance. Yeah, the
I want to hear from
GameCube.
I want to hear from Richard. Like, what's the beef? Is he just on a holy war to take down Microsoft? Like, I find it humorous watching Steam kind of just, we're gonna come in the living room, we want to build our own Windows less machine, like yada yada yada. To me, this all just stems from the history of them and Microsoft.
I mean, Valve is very, very aware of its constraints, and it's it's in an incredibly luxurious position where it makes absurd amounts of money and can do whatever it wants. I mean, they know that Steam Deck is a very niche device. I mean, effectively with a Steam Deck or a box in your living room that replicates your PC, you're basically asking people in luxury positions to say, oh yeah, I'll drop $1,000 on another machine that does exactly the same that the other machine in the other room does, but it's under my TV. And the Steam Deck is the same, right? I'm going to be able to play my games that I can play over there, over here. It's absolutely everything the Switch solved by doing what it did. I think Valve just like playing around with this sort of thing. They like playing away in the hardware staves, and for people who have that luxury to spend $1,000 on something like that, sure, give it to them. Let them do it. And like I say, I mean, the PC now is a long way from where it was 10, 15 years ago when it was a mouse and keyboard device. Now you can actually control most games on Steam with a controller. So having it as a console-style device under your TV makes perfect sense. But if you've got a PC in the other room, and I think this is Microsoft's problem with Helix, is that if you're going to make Helix a Xbox and a PC at the same time, what drives me away from just playing on the PC?
But and like as it got Steam built in, they have not commented on that. That's the thing I keep wondering is like, are they going to allow Steam to be on the device in the living room, or are they only going to allow their own launchers, be it like the Xbox launcher and the BattleNet? To me, like I have to guess it'd be the BattleNet. Like, oh, we got PC games. Look, BattleNet. You could play World of Warcraft in your living room. Like, well, that's a terrible experience. It's a mouse keyboard game. What in what earth would I play my MMO in the living room with a controller? Like, personally, I'm having issue playing Crimson Desert on my PlayStation. And don't ask me why I bought it on there. It was a mistake. I regret it. The controllers are awful. And I'm playing this game and I'm like 5 hours in, so the sunk cost has already hit me. And I'm like, I'm not restarting this game again. And I'm like, I hate that I cannot set hotkeys for these stupid actions. I have to like memorize the like controller schema of like how to like not shoot an arrow in the guy's face as I'm trying to talk to him because the key's like right next to it on my controller, which solves with a keyboard and mouse. Like there's certain games that keyboard and mouse are just better for. Crimson Desert is a great example of one. Just better on a keyboard and mouse. I know it in my bones, and I am forcing myself to play it on PlayStation. But like going back to my point, like putting BattleNet on the next Xbox, like why? Like these games.
Well, I mean, for everything they've said, you would expect Steam to be on that.
I would hope. I mean, we shall see.
And then, so now you've basically done Steam's job of putting an Xbox or putting a Steam box in the living room,
helping them sell Steam.
And then Steam gets 30% of everything, and not you, which is. Again, monetization-wise, I don't understand the financials behind doing that. But
why release a device you're going to make no money on to then have another company eat your margins by offering up? They can offer up 25% and just undercut the whole thing. And be like, if you play on your Xbox, we'll just charge you less on the margin just to eat their lunch. Yeah, that's a great question.
All of which, highlights with the RAM situations going on at the moment and everything else, how anyone's going to actually afford a new console anyway. I mean, I think the PS5 is going to be around and Xbox X is going to be around till 2035 at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're wrong because it's only going to get worse. I mean, Nintendo just begrudgingly raised their prices today, so or they're going to. They announced it on the earnings call, which I mean, it makes sense. And then like, does the console become more of a luxury item? Like to me, the question on that platform is like, are they going to just going to keep the Switch going longer? Like, you know, I know people would disagree with that, but you have 190 million devices in the world. Are you not going to support it with some level of software longer because you know it's
Oh,
going
they
to take a
will. I mean, I think, it's funny. Chris String brought this up this morning, and I was just like, well, putting stuff that's already on Switch 2 back on Switch 1 is just technically a real pain in the ass, so that's unlikely. And anything that's in development for just Switch 2, but, they had Pokemon, and Pokemon will probably stay on both. Um, because, yeah, you don't turn, if I'm a developer today developing a game that's going to go on Switch, I'm going to make sure it's on Switch, not Switch 2.
Mhm.
Because I want to tap into 150 million devices.
Yeah, and like, but Nintendo's been in this world before-ish, where if you just look at the handheld world, and then they ran a console business, like they've operated multiple platforms at once. One lo-fi, which is the handheld, and one hi-fi, which is their console. It's like going kind of back to what they were, except they're just becoming Apple, where they just had multiple switches in the market, and you have your low version, your high version. I mean,
I mean, look
I
how long it took Sony to get off PS4. It
yeah.
wasn't overnight. I mean, they were doing stuff cross-platform. Miles Morales and all that sort of stuff is still cross-platform. So, I think PS5, PS6, and Xbox X Helix is going to go on forever. I mean, I know everyone's saying, well, it's got all this AI stuff that can only be done on this. It's like, doesn't matter. You can't ignore the market that's already there. So, a lot of the stuff. I mean, the way the PS6 is being engineered, it seems to be efficient and doing a lot of work for developers as opposed to truly changing the game. I'm going to do a PS6 exclusive game and it's going to do something so much more because we've kind of hit a ceiling in that stuff anyway. We hit it with, honestly, I always say that when we switched from SD to HD, that was kind of the last frontier of visuals. When you get to 4K 60 frames a second, there's really not a lot more you need. Do games really need to look that much better? Okay, well, AI will super sample them and make them look nicer, but, I just need a 4K 60 frames a second game and I'm really happy.
I mean, just seeing what the Switch 2 can do, and I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, this is fine. Like, I don't. How much more premium? Like to me, like as a person, my biggest driving force is portability, right? So I am lucky enough to own a Portal, a Steam Deck, and a Switch 2. So anything that could be like me walking from one room to another room as my kids want to watch whatever mind-numbing cartoon show on Disney Plus on my big screen TV. Right now it's Mira, Royal Detective. I just want to die. I go and put my headset on my portable device and play whatever game I'm playing right now. So like
And
portability,
we're in
nice.
a completely different discussion here, but fidelity and visual quality and everything else. Always for donkey's years, we said that's going to be the barrier between our 250 million unit kind of console environment that is in the world and a billion people playing our games. And it's not true. Nobody cares. Especially the kids of today, they don't care. That's actually the barrier between us getting from 250 million people to a billion or 2 billion people is that people don't understand this and they don't have one in their living room and they can't do this.
Yeah.
They're happy on mobile devices, right? They're happy with a touchscreen just doing this. So, it's not going to massively expand our market just because we're now looking at photorealistic graphics. That doesn't change anything. We did for a long time think it was, but it doesn't. Anyway,
Back to
wasn't.
Xbox.
No, but I
And
think
Sony
Richard,
and Nintendo and exclusives.
no, but you brought up a good point. Like the generational divide, like interests me a lot. Like Colin, you have like kids that are growing up now. Richard, you have I think an older daughter. I can't remember, but it's how do you deal with that? How can you predict how players want? Like everyone's playing Roblox because they can play with their friends, they can play whatever they want, and they can play on their PC, and they can maybe port it. Shouldn't we be going towards that direction where you can play any game you want, wherever you want, whenever you want? Like, isn't that kind of the direction overall for at least the next generation of gamers that aren't like console ridden?
Yeah, I think when people think of Roblox, they miss the whole point that it's free. Like, it's just like it's like I go back to the free, like they're for the premium gaming ecosystem, and I actually think the same thing for entertainment. Netflix, I feel the same way. Disney Plus, I feel the same way. Like until they come to church and realize that there has to be a free option supported by ads, they're going to continue to lose a generation because the generation is very used to free entertainment. Like the people that bemoan like all my time is being spent on TikTok and YouTube ignore the fact that they're also free. Like free is so powerful. Free, and then they watch ads. Okay, great. And sometimes people don't even realize they're watching ad, like on TikTok. It's like some influencer tap dancing a screwdriver. Like, okay, well, whatever. Like, sure. And then you go on to the next like swipe, and like kids don't even realize that's an ad, but like that's ads, and Roblox is littered with ads. And so fidelity doesn't matter so long as it's accessible, which I think is a larger point. And I think accessibility comes on having it available on multiple platforms. That's a form of accessibility. Accessibility also comes in the form of price point. And I'm not saying everyone loses their shirts by making free games. I just think you have to figure out a way to monetize beyond just the price point of the device out the gate. And that's on the platforms to figure that out, not on the game makers, in my opinion.
I mean, Roblox is a playground, right? When I was a kid, we used to go out in the playground and play kick the can, British Bulldog, whatever it was, tag. That's what Roblox is for kids today. They just pick it up, usually on this,
Mm-hmm.
and just play with their friends. And it's just like going out and playing in the street. And so, but yeah, I mean, in terms of where things are going, it's very interesting. My kids are, I think, slightly older than Cohen's. So, you know, they're 21 and 19, and they're
Slightly.
basically slightly. So I watched them grow through this, you know, play games entirely differently than how I do. I mean, I get down on my PS5 and I'm like this. I've got nothing else going on in the world. I'm playing my game. Whereas whenever they're playing, no matter what they're playing on their PC over there, you know, they've got the game running here, and then they've got YouTube, they've got Discord, they've got whatever else going on with their friends on a completely separate screen, and they're multitasking between the whole thing. And yeah, what's important to them is entertainment, fun, and social, and talking to their friends about it, even if it's a single player game. I mean, you know, first time I played Humans Fall Flat, and I'm just like, I just don't get this at all. It's stupid. The controls don't work. You know, it's just badly engineered. And my daughter is having an absolute blast with it. And then I'm watching my wife cracking up on the couch behind me because I can't play it. And it was just like, it was just pure entertainment, and it was janky. But what that's actually become is authentic. And that's why you see things like Peak and all these other games being, and Where's My RV and all this sort of stuff becoming so successful, and the stuff on Roblox. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be polished. If it feels authentic and fun and something I can relate to, then I'm going to be entertained by it. And so, you know, they play things very, very differently, and they interact with things differently. And to your point, Colin, they want it free. So, you know, one of them's a huge Genshin fan, one of them's a huge Honkai fan, one of them's a huge Valorant fan. You know, they play things that they can download and play with their friends for no cost. And yeah, they'll do in-app purchasing and all the rest of it and watch ads. But you know, they still do like playing premium stuff. But it's like, you know, that they will go to a premium movie if it's the right movie at the right time.
Yeah,
You
which
know,
makes
they
it a
want
lot
to go and
fewer.
see the Super Galaxy, you know, Super Mario Galaxy movie they wanted to go and see.
Well, let me pull it back to Microsoft because they own one of those things, or not free per se, but like they own Minecraft, low fidelity graphics, infinite amount of fun, and they just ignore all the lessons they could be learning from there and just focus on the other side of the. And I think you just have to walk in both worlds if you're going to be like a successful organization in Xbox in the future. Like I've been pretty public. I still think they're going to get cut out for parts and sold to various entities, but like if they're going to make a shot at it, they're going to have to find a way to thread this needle because I don't think they're going to. I go back to earlier comment. I don't think they're beating PlayStation at their game. I don't think they're beating Nintendo in their game. I don't think they have the IP to do it, even with all their acquisitions. And given the cost of those acquisitions, I don't think they're going to be able to execute an exclusive of strategy without losing their shirt on it. And if Microsoft was sitting on a pile of cash, all of Apple, and they didn't really care about anything else, then maybe they could play the long game there. But they're trying to raise money to build server farms across the world so they can power their AI juggernaut. So they're in a CapEx crunch. They don't have the luxury of sitting on their hands and just collecting money. They're spending it faster than they could spend it, or spending it at the tick as they earn it. Maybe they're not in debt, but they're spending it as they earn it. And this becomes a problem when you're not fully monetizing your games as they are.
What is the AI juggernaut? Because you mentioned that, Colin. What do you mean? What's Microsoft's strategy? As like, I know there's the new CEO is AI centric, but like, I think for a lot of people
less
that's
about
confusing.
her.
Yeah.
I'd ignore that background. I think that's a lot of conversation on the internet because she took an AI job. I think every
Yeah.
executive post 2020 trying to climb the ladder is going to end up having an AI job on the resume as they try to get to the next thing, because that's just what you're doing right now. Those are the companies that are growing the fastest, so you just glom onto there. I look at her experience at Meta, and I'm like, what's Meta do? Oh, ads. Ah, okay. That's why I come to the conclusion that that's the direction she's probably going to go into, because she's bringing a bunch of other people from Meta and from Instacart who all did ads, ads, ads. Whether they worked on ads directly or their company's supported by ads, it's ads, right? So that's why I think she's going in that direction, if I had to guess. But the AI
But
side,
I think Colin's point is actually to Microsoft as a whole company as opposed to
yeah.
Xbox as a company. So, they're
But
driving AI alongside Google and Meta and
yeah,
all the
100%.
other people as a
Okay.
company, not as Xbox.
Yeah, they're trying to fight this three-way holy war between Amazon, Google, and themselves on like who's going to own the digital real estate in the future, which all servers are. If you just boil down what's a server farm, it is where digital bits live and grow, and the faster you scale there, the more you own of the virtual world, which is kind of where everything's going. And the reason why I thought they were going to go to Game Pass, this is always my earlier theory before AI blew up, is like the reason they were so invested on cloud gaming was there was this need to find a way to hyperscale the next iteration of cloud. And Amazon kind of dominated video. They built the AWS rise also kind of coincides with the rise of Netflix streaming, because Netflix was primarily on AWS. So those things are in parallel to each other. And so AWS has this like juggernaut, highly profitable business built on the back of streaming video. Well, what takes more bits to stream? Games. Oh, never mind the latency issues and blah blah. There's so many issues that comes with streaming games that don't exist in other formats. But like the idea of streaming gaming as the next frontier made a lot of sense. And then all of a sudden
I don't
ChatGPT
have
felt
one of these.
yeah. ChatGPT falls out of the sky and changes the whole math equation, and now they're chasing AI because that takes more compute than anything else. So they're all chasing AI, not because they want artificial intelligence. I mean, maybe they do. I think it's because they want to they want the compute in the cloud to be scaled up further so they can make all that margin that AWS showed you can make in server farms over a decade ago. That's what the business is about. So they will pour money into that forever, and everything else is in friction to that, right? And they make a lot of money. Their earnings are crazy. They're like, oh yeah, 40% margins on our AI infrastructure cloud game. Like, my God, that's insane. And the amount of
Yep.
money they're making is insane. And then gaming here is like, we lost 5% year over year. Like, wah, wah, wah. Like, those things are in friction at some point, right? Like, they're going to look and we're like, what are we doing here? Like, there's an opportunity cost. My CFO has to stare at your P&L every quarter and try to make sense on it for the street when she could be spending her time on literally anything else to be more profitable use of her time. And that's the friction they have at Microsoft that doesn't exist in other gaming companies.
But it's interesting that the moves that have happened since Asher became CEO at Xbox have certainly shifted away from make margin at all costs. I mean, just in a very short term, most of it's just, talk.
Oh,
Putting a new boot screen up and I'm going to update the system software. The system software is not the problem. There's nothing wrong with the Xbox X system software. But, there's a lot of talk about, well, do we go back to exclusives? Do we do this? How do we do this? We're going to take Call of Duty out of Game Pass, which is a smart move. There doesn't seem to be this, we've got to have a 30% margin by year X going on. It's like they've had a slight change of heart about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to own the market. What that is, I don't know. I mean, there are
oh,
lots of
I'm
tales about it in terms of ads and driving through ads, and then owning the PC by just making it part of Windows and all the rest of it. There's lots of different avenues for them to pursue, but it certainly seems to have changed the tone a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's been on a all timer PR run where it's just really hard to like follow all her moves. So she's like terminally online. Her or her team, whoever manages her accounts, it's like terminally online. It's just like when you think you had the story of the day for Microsoft, Windows Central drops another story because she's tweeting at someone. You're like, oh my God, what's going on right here? Then you just like consume that. You're like, so she's like, and because of that, like I'm almost expecting a Tony Stark-esque like introduction at Summer Game Fest at whatever Xbox event they have, where there's just gonna be fireworks and rock music, and she's gonna wear that jacket that she's known to wear. And I'm like, she's gonna be like, okay, you just got a lot of personality to her, and like her early stuff, just like she's winning the internet, and it's working. I mean, your point
But
about why change the low screen, the internet, and the the internet's clapping like seals, like this is amazing. They brought that green back, and I got that sweet like RGB like background again. Like it doesn't change anything about anything, but I guess it's a great PR move to bring back the old.
But none of the announcements or anything else focused on we're going to start making really great system selling software that makes you want to buy an Xbox, which is their entire problem. Going back to the start of this of what we're talking about here is that they've got, without being harsh, the same guy overlooking their studios who's been overlooking their studios for the last 12 years and produced nothing. And so the one position they had to change, they haven't changed. And so the one thing they need to do, which is to produce an Insomniac, a Naughty Dog, a Sucker Punch, and a Gorilla, they haven't been able to do. Playground's as close as they get. I mean, Playground, hopefully Fable will be fantastic.
Fable.
It looks great. Forza is fantastic. So and Rare, Sea of Thieves is sitting there and it's successful and all the rest of it, but it's not the Rare of old that produced banger after banger. So they need someone who doesn't greenlight Hellblade 2. I mean, why did they ever greenlight that game? It's insane to spend 8 years building that game. They should have been building an Uncharted competitor or a Superman or a Spider-Man or whatever. It's insane. I mean, they've got talented studios. Halo Studios is just a mess.
And I also think it is a mess. I mean, if you had a time machine, would both Bungie and them wish that they didn't just break up the way they did? Like, just seeing what's going on with Bungie now, I just feel bad for that company and that studio. Like, oh man, there's just some misguided steps that happened over the last 10 years, obviously.
Yeah, but, I mean, they're juggling balls, and Marathon is a great game, but
it's
the problem with Marathon is as I keep saying, when Concord came out, I said the biggest problem was not just that it didn't offer anything new, which is primarily why it failed. It wasn't a bad game. It just didn't offer anything new. There was no attachment to it. And the problem with Marathon is the same thing. If you put a PvP multiplayer game out there, why do I care? Put a campaign on it. The reason that Call of Duty failed the 1 year that they took the campaign off it is that people like those campaigns. It attaches you to the game. And so even if it's a 4 or 5 hour little campaign on the front of it, I'm in the world, I'm attached to the characters, I know what it's all about, and then I go and play the multiplayer stuff. Without that, you're just kind of saying, hey, believe in my world because it's here. And there's no emotional link there, no matter how cool the art is. And it is cool. I love it.
Oh, it's cool. I equate Marathon to equate to a punk rock band that's playing arena tours and now has to go back and make a garage punk album because they feel like it's in their blood to prove they can still do it. So they go making their grungy album, except they spent $300 million making that. It's opposed to making it for $50,000 in a garage. And so you're overly produced game for what it was, which is to prove to the core shooter audience, we can still make that core shooter game, don't worry. But then your TAM is PC gamers, and it's not even on the device of PlayStation. You're courting PC players,
which is fine. I mean, that was part of the games as a service push, right? That's why they got bought. That's why Concord existed in the first place. It's like Sony were sitting on the sidelines of gas and going, everyone's making $1 billion. And it's not just Sony. Everybody went after this, right? Everybody chased it, except for the Japanese who went, I don't really understand this, not going to do that.
I was saying Nintendo
and everybody got caught, right? I mean, every VC under the sun for the last greenlit something in COVID got burnt. And everybody failed because sometime around 2022, 2023, the market topped out in terms of player hours. And therefore you had to steal your players from somebody else. And as we know from the data, people don't move across games very easily. They stick to what they know.
That's exactly right. I report on it all the time. People love that 85% of gamers love the game they have now. They are non-acquirable. They're just going to hang out in their little game. And you're fighting over that 15% of available attention on every single week. And it's why games that might not think they have the same players competing against each other, well, you're fighting over a very limited piece of pie. And because of that, it's all just sum at the end of the day, what's remaining, right? Because that person playing Skyrim is going to keep playing Skyrim with their mods. They got their old friend group there. They got their, their Curse Forge going, and they're not leaving, right? They got their Slide Sabers in the game. They're just going to play their mod, and that's it, right? That's the gamer. And they're still gamers. They ask them in the survey, are you a gamer? Yeah, I spend 10, 15 hours a week playing Skyrim. But they're just not playing a modern game, and they have no interest in playing a modern game.
My former employees, Warframe is now more successful, I think, right now than it has been in a long time. I mean, they just keep running update after update after update, and they're just knocking it out of the park. And
Yeah,
people,
and
there's
you were
70,000 people at any 1 minute playing Warframe, and it's
I mean
just on PC.
you were at RuneScape, right? So like you know this better than right? You were at RuneScape, old school RuneScape. Old school RuneScape's a beast. How old is that game? Jesus,
Yeah,
things
Yeah,
like
it's still going. Players
World
want to
of
play the.
Warcraft.
I mean, I will say though, for old school RuneScape, players do really want to play on mobile. Like I'll say that's one avenue I think they can pursue because the idea of an
that's
MMORPG that you can
accessibility
just
though.
accessibility, right? You can play wherever you are. But
Well, I mean, this is actually the most fascinating one recently is Payday. Payday going on Roblox, which is completely bizarre to me because, it's like, an M-rated, very M-rated game is now on Roblox. And it's like one of the most popular Roblox games out there. And it's just like, if you can then merge them into mainstream Payday and get them paying for it, that's great.
Mhm.
It's an
isn't
advert. To
Yeah.
Colin's point, it's basically an advert for Payday. Hey, Louis, if you really like this, you should go and play the adult version.
well,
Well, it's
then
better
isn't
than throwing money at
Microsoft?
influencers, in my opinion. Like you build an ecosystem, you could drive traffic there. That's better in terms of building brand equity over time. I just think like, why not, right? If you can do it, you can do it.
But isn't Microsoft in such a risky situation where, like, if they flip flop on kind of Game Pass, no Game Pass, do expand like World of Warcraft on console, like if players are so habitual and like 75%, 80 are already playing like the game they want and the way they want, like them trying to expand or do different, like it's almost unnecessary. You have to like meet the players where they are. Like, this is what I like doing. I like playing in this way. I like playing with mods. They can't really afford to go back and forth. They can't like take Call of Duty out of Game Pass, put it back on. Like the player gets confused, the player gets frustrated.
Yeah, I think people like the Call of Duty fan that's gonna play Call of Duty. Like the majority of them are gonna play Warzone forever. They're just like, I have my Warzone, I play Warzone, that's what I play. And then the ones that actually buy the annual version of COD will continue. Like COD is one of those unique franchises where it's like that's a single buyer every year. Like, I call it like gaming dads, which I guess I'm part of, but I'm too core still. It's like, oh, I play Madden, but Call of Duty, maybe I play 2K, and like in some sort of cycle of those three. And that's like your American single gamer player, right? They buy that game habitually. Every November they walk in the store and like, oh, looks like Call of Duty's out, and they just pick it up, put it in the machine, right? That's just a habit. I think
Yeah,
like
I
so.
mean, pulling Call of Duty out of Game Pass is probably the least controversial thing they could have done because it lowers the price of Game Pass, which is smart. And honestly, the people who are going to play Call of Duty, they're going to buy Call of Duty. They've been buying Call of Duty for 15 years, so it doesn't. The small slice of them that just got it on Game Pass, they would have bought it anyway. So it doesn't really
Okay,
make a lot of
so
difference.
please, I think I'm confused on this. I think maybe other people listening are. How does the Game Pass work in the sense that if Call of Duty's on Game Pass, how does the price then go up for everyone? Like in a simple way, because I didn't realize that if you have like a massive game on Game Pass, then you have to raise the price for everyone. I mean, obviously there's a formula and everything to it, but how does that work? Because you just said by
Well, I
removing Call
mean,
of
Call
Duty.
of Duty costs an awful lot of money to
Yeah.
make. So if you're giving it away for free on your
Yeah,
free service, you've got to raise the price to absorb some of that cost. But it's,
yeah,
I think that's more of a value thing. I mean, they put the price up. They put the price of Game Pass up to make the margins bigger.
yeah.
So that I'm not sure they're directly correlated, and I don't think taking Call of Duty out of Game Pass, there's not a one-to-one correlation of it saves $6 or $8 a month. But it's the two things put together. You can say, okay, well that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
it's more of a marketing thing than an actual dollar for dollar thing.
Yeah. So accounting wise, and shout out to accountants that listen to you and then come back to me and tell me I'm wrong. So please, accounting wise, when you create something that is not, we're not exchanging cash to the consumer specifically to that item to then obtain, and you're shifting that accounting structure over from one year to the next, you're going to show massive losses. Like, because me spending more time on Game Pass or spending more time in this game on Game Pass doesn't really translate to money in hand. It translates to lifetime value or LTV. That's how these big companies talk about it, LTV. And okay, at some point, cash is cash. And it wouldn't matter so much if Microsoft wasn't spending all its cash. But when they're spending all the cash they can, it becomes a weird accounting problem. Like, well, why are we giving away a thing that we used to get a quarter to $500 million in profit every year, cash in our bank account? That's no longer there because we told Wall Street that we'll make it up in 10 years over LTV because that's the math we're trying to sell the market. And it's that's where the whole thing breaks on itself. Like, you just need cash, man. Sometimes companies need cash, and Microsoft's in a position where they need cash. So the Call of Duty thing would make sense if they weren't burning their cash separately on a whole different endeavor that has nothing to do with gaming. And I think that's the pickle they find themselves in.
So they sacrifice the price of their biggest titles in order to prop up the Game Pass kind of ecosystem and model.
LTV math. Yeah, LTV math. Yeah. Which is hilarious because at the end of the day, no analyst on Wall Street goes, oof, we're going to knock them down 50 cents to $1 on the share price because Xbox didn't make their numbers. No one gives a shit. Sorry, you say, no one cares. Did Xbox make some numbers? That doesn't matter. What is Azure doing this quarter?
And it's to your point, it's kind of a retention mechanic, right? One of the biggest problems I think the Game Pass has probably suffered from is people join it for a month to get a bunch of games and then drop it. And then they do it. I mean, this is why they stopped the $1 trial thing, because that's what everybody was doing. They would just get, hey, I'll pay for $1 and then I'll get it and I'll drop it. So what they desperately need is games that keep you subscribed. So there's the philosophy of I'm just going to throw more and more games at you month after month so you don't want to leave. But there's also I'm playing the same game and it's on Game Pass and therefore I'm sticking with my Game Pass.
Yeah, and to go back to our earlier point you made, Richard, at the beginning of this conversation, when you said they were chasing Netflix, you're correct, except Netflix's whole business to Wall Street and their share price was based on subscriptions and do they go up or do they not go up? And they had, their whole valuation as an organization was making that model work. That was never the case with Microsoft.
And scale.
Yeah.
The scale of Netflix is way beyond where Game Pass could ever be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, just in terms of addressable, to your point, addressable market is just so much bigger.
Yeah, right.
And that's my question actually to you about ads. Is the market? I mean, I guess with PC, if you bring PC into it, then it works. But on Xbox alone, is that market big enough to serve ads to?
I think you change the friction point. I think once you become free, you drive a lot more people willing to try you, especially internationally and globally, right? They're more apt to go to your platform and suffer through the ads. And then you create, and I'm not saying it all is free, you can buy your way out of ads. So they'll have tiers. Like the best model is premium super tier, no ads, never see them. Great. You pay us, the same price you pay us now. The middle tier, which is you're willing to suffer through some ads, but not all ads. Great. We'll put you there. And then you have the punishing model, which you're going to get hit with a lot of ads, but you get to play all the games you want for free. And I think that just scales globally. We don't, to be honest about this, there's one platform who is basically built on a ecosystem of free apps that make up a gajillion dollars, and then they pretend they lose money on a film studio I actually don't think they care about, other than to show that they are not as profitable as they are, which is Apple. Apple makes all its money from its app store and its app ecosystem because half the stuff on there is free. It's just, I cannot emphasize enough that the mechanics of free, especially, I don't want to say just because of this economy, but just the economics of free is such an overwhelmingly strong force that it'll just drive people to it because it's free, right? And they might not be willing to play every game, but with a person looking to kill an afternoon, fire up Forza Horizon 5 and go, oh, well, it's free, and they'll just drive around Mexico for a little bit. Of course they will, right? And so a larger question, Richard, the scale, I think you get scale as you kind of grow. Every platform starts at a point, and then the more consumer demand you can kind of holster up, the better your ads become, the more you get the ads in there, the more you offset a lot of the cost of what the free means to all the people you're basically giving a game away for free. But they have the catalog. As the largest third-party publisher in the world, they have a whole bunch of games that could
as long
be
as
free
you got
tomorrow.
access. So for access, you need at least a PC. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The Xbox's market isn't big enough. That's my point.
Oh,
but Chris Anderson was writing about this in 2009, right?
I know.
One of the greatest foresight books ever written. That was.
And I know now Yost writes about this, and I'm like, he's right. He's right. Matt Ball wrote about this, basically, not calling it explicit like this, but he was like, yep, you're right. At some point, the wheels have turned to monetizing the attention on the platform like it is everywhere else. And that's the thing gaming hasn't quite figured out. Outside of mobile. Mobile does it now phenomenally well. AppLovin is a great business that makes a lot of money pummeling people with ads across all sorts of apps.
But again, scale.
Yeah, right? You're right. Billions of people. Totally right.
Billions, not 250 million, right?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
So where does this put exclusives, right? If we go back to the whole point of like the conversation, right? Like we're talking about free. I mean, on paper, it sounds like Game Pass is brilliant because you get access to all these games. Maybe you get like a family pass, get a bunch of games every month. I'm not saying it's free, but I'm saying that if you play a lot, you get kind of better value for money
Oh,
than if I'm to
don't
drop
get me wrong.
nine.
Game Pass for consumer is actually a good thing.
Great. Yeah.
It's just
Let
not
me
sustainable from a business model. Yeah, go ahead, Colin. Sorry.
Let me take it because this is like the argument I've gotten into about other medium. So I'll just drive it to another medium. The best thing that could be done to drive more interest in Star Wars is to take the library of Star Wars content that's been on Disney Plus for more than a year, put it on a free, fast version of Disney Plus, and let people watch it and consume it. And the reason you do that is twofold. One, a lot of people engage with free content they do already, right? Free ad-supported TV is a big business. People like watching old cable network in a linear format because it's just free. So that's a big business. But on top of that, it functions as marketing to the thing you actually want them to do, which is to purchase the Mandalorian ticket to go to the movie, right? Like that's what you want them to do. But you need to find a bridge to bring them on board again because they have left you for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. But the best way to do it is to have some sort of windowed version of your content that's basically free, where you go, okay, come enjoy Clone Wars, the animated show that was on 15 years ago on Cartoon Network. Like it's great. We've monetized it the best we can. That lemon has been squeezed to death. Now we're gonna give it to you for free with ads. So just come and watch it on your own leisure. And it builds
As
fandom.
TV always was, right?
I know, right? They lost it. They lost it on there. They forgot how to make money on
TV is
free.
exactly that. You know, if you like, go see the movie. If you've not seen the movie, you can watch it on TV 6 months later, but you have to watch adverts in it.
And the reason that model broke is they got greedy on carriage fees, which then caused the cable operators to raise their prices, and consumers don't want to pay for something and watch ads. That's the biggest thing they don't like.
Well, other people brought in other ways of doing things which lured people away, but then those people, as you say, like Netflix, are now going back the other way.
Totally. People make the trade-off to say, people naturally go, if it's free, I'll accept ads. And if it's not free and I pay for it, then I want to see few to no ads. And that's like the mental trade-off. Like I either pay with my time or my wallet, but not both. And I'm not being monetized both ways. And that's where
And so Netflix could run a massive loss for years and years and years because they stole the viewers from TV who were fed up with adverts, and now they're coming back to it. To the point of exclusives, I don't think Sony and Nintendo are going to change. And I think Microsoft will probably find a way to go back to it, but they need the content, and that's what's lacking. I mean, Microsoft, if they're smart with Helix, will launch it with something that you cannot play anywhere else. You can only play on Xbox. It's brand new and it's amazing and it makes you want to buy the platform. The question is, do they have the game to do that? And I don't think you look at the stuff that they've already got elsewhere in studios elsewhere. It has to be something brand new, unique that you can't get anywhere else. And Sony will do the same. You know, the next Naughty Dog game will only be on PS6 in 20 years' time or whenever it comes out. You know, after Intergalactic, obviously.
And to be clear, I'm very much on board with everything you just said. And my whole rant about free is only because the only way you're going to convince the consumer that what you have that is exclusive is worth their time is finding a way to build trust with the consumer again. And they're not willing to buy a device at like $1,000 price point. So you're going to have to find some sort of middle ground to at least get them engaged with the IP you own. So they're actually interested in the next iteration of Gears of War or Fable or whatever they might be trying to do, right? Although I'm a little bit more bullish on Fable than not, because that game, the team behind it, and all that sort of stuff. But I digress. Like they need exclusives. They need a reason to purchase the machine or to purchase into the ecosystem. They just lack it right now, and it's not Halo. They lost that.
My only query about Fable is it's going to be quirky, so probably won't be very big in China.
Oh, well, if it's not quirky and I don't get the title
It's
Chicken
not
Chaser
Fable.
in the first hour, it's not Fable. If I'm not kicking chickens and getting a Cockney person to scream at me, then it's not Fable.
Yep, totally.
Guys, last section I want to touch on, which is Nintendo. Colin, I want to start with you. Why does the old model, like the exclusive model, like the moat that Nintendo has built, like why will it still work for Nintendo? Why will it survive with Nintendo? Because they seem to do that the best way.
Because they never lost sight of anything, because they don't chase earnings, because when they have a device that sells like donkey doo-doo, the CEO takes a pay cut, makes his execs take a pay cut, and they keep everybody on board on the promise that they'll kind of course correct and fix your problem. Like Nintendo is just a phenomenally run company, but like to me, they've built such a loop of consumer trust where they make games and then they sit on them forever until they feel they're ready to be released. Like, this game's not ready yet. We might have to sit on this for another 9 months. Like they're just very disciplined in how they execute, and they will give games the proper time to cook to make it the best thing it can be until they fully release it. And because they are so disciplined on that side, the consumers know that, and they've built a cult of Nintendo. It's no different than the Apple cult in my mind. People love Apple and they also love Nintendo, and they not the same person per se, but just a general fandom that is around Nintendo, and they've just done that through decades and decades and decades and decades of consumer trust building, right? And I think
It comes down to one thing. They have generational IP.
Mhm.
So if you go to a school, my kid works in her old school up the road, and I'm like, how many Nintendo backpacks are there? And these are middle school, secondary school, so 7 to 12, somewhere around there. And she's like, they are at least half the class have Nintendo backpacks. They are in the ecosystem from the start to the end. They're like Disney, right? You don't grow up without Disney now. You don't grow up without Nintendo. Sony and Microsoft aged out of it. When it came to the PS3 and 360, they kind of left that generation behind, and Naughty Dog stopped producing Jack and Daxter and Crash Bandicoot and started producing The Last of Us. They went, okay, we're kind of like, and Sony were always this, right? I mean, that was half the push when we introduced the PlayStation in the first place, was like, we're going to be the clubbing console. You're going to go home from the club and you're going to play Wipeout. That was the pitch. It was never we're going to get, the kids to play it. That stuff did happen on PS1 and PS2. By PS3 and Xbox 360, that had kind of gone away, and we were cool for adults and 18 to 35-year-olds and beyond. Whereas Nintendo are like, we make games. They're a toy company. They're not a video game company. They're a toy company. So they make toys that people play with from the age of 3 to the age of 90 at this point, because we've all grown up with them. And so they don't lose that. And so,
Yeah.
Mario doesn't have an age group.
Yeah.
Everybody from, your youngest to your oldest who grew up with Super Mario on a NES, still wants to play Nintendo games because they're just joyful.
Yeah, and if you look at the most valuable IP in the world, Nintendo owns at least 2 of them in the like top 20, and that's Mario and Pokemon. And I would probably put Zelda in there too. I have to see that list, but like no other gaming company owns one. Like it's just them. Like Nintendo owns more than
Minecraft.
one.
I'd argue
Um,
Minecraft, Microsoft
yeah,
too. But
yeah. That's fair point. But it's not exclusive, and it can't be because it has to be on mobile
no,
phone to scale.
exactly.
So Nintendo, their IP and their relationship with the consumer starts young, and they never let go. I mean, I grew up with Mario on my NES. Takes my kid to go see the Mario movie, and they're like, "Oh, this is great," So again, they're being indoctrinated by me, and they're more interested in that than all the other stuff you see in my office. They could care less about Star Wars.
And the Switch was the smartest thing ever, because one of the things I think is fascinating also, the multiple ecosystem thing I talked about as well. When I play my Switch and my Switch 2, I actually still play it on the TV, whereas my kids have always played it in the hands. They're like,
Oh,
unless it's Mario Kart or something that requires a big screen with 4 players split, they always play it handheld because they just want the convenience of it. Whereas I still want the graphical splendor on the big screen of Zelda. They don't care. They're just,
well, that and you own multiple Switches
they're
in the house.
platform adapted. They platform adapted to the next generation. They're just the smartest around. Simple as
And
that.
they created a device where the household has to own like 2 or 3 Switches in the house, and then they
Yes, thank you, Animal Crossing.
like, how many Switches does your
And
household
then
own?
they
Like,
introduce a light version so that doesn't really affect your wallet as much as it did.
Wait, so is the secret sauce IP like for an like?
yeah.
Do you need IP, and how on earth do you create new like top 10 IP? Like it feels like Pokemon, like Mario, these have been around for decades. Like you're not gonna just Sony's not
You
gonna create like a new IP.
small. You start small, and you
but
do
no
it
one
in
wants to
batches of
start
3.
small,
So
right?
the reason that Naughty Dog are so successful is they did Crash Bandicoot, and then 2, and then 3, and then Crash Team Racing, and they built a franchise. And then they iterated on that and iterated on that with Jack and Daxter, and that just led to the next thing, the next thing. Same with Insomniac with Spyro. If you look at it today, you can look at CD Projekt with Witcher, you can look at Larian with what they've done with Divinity, and Divinity Original Sin 2, and then Baldur's Gate. You can't jump to number 3. You can't jump to number 5. You have to start with, I'm going to beachhead this IP with something really great, that people can experience and get a community attached to that, and then you build on it and build on it and build on it. There's no shortcut. Very rarely. I mean, yeah, Crimson Desert can come out of nowhere, but Pearl Abyss had games sort of in that genre, in that
Yeah,
realm
yeah,
before.
Black Desert Online is like predecessor of the
Yeah.
future. So like it's not a clean like new IP. I mean, yeah, new IP's hard. I mean, in this stretch of time, Pokemon's not that old. Like the fact that it's considered the most valuable IP in the world, and you go, well, when did it come out? The 90s? Like that's dropping the time bucket, right? And sure, their valuation is skyrocketed in part because they are effectively Mickey Mouse and then some across all of Asia. Like you go there and it's Pokemon. Like and it's about what Pokemon, not so much Pokemon generally, but just a specific one that you have now archetyped your whole life around, like be it the Pikachu or the Eevee or whatever, right? Or the Snorlax or whatever. That's just the uniqueness, but like, it's not easy and it just takes time and effort and concentration and iteration. Like, people say, oh, Mario valuable IP, but God, Mario's in a lot of games. Like he just does everything.
Yeah.
I bet there's
But
a
that's also
Mario
the thing, is
vacuum cleaning and
design.
cleaning my house is probably a game. I just don't know about it. Like Mario house cleaning. Like, okay, I'm sure that's a game.
But that's also, the basics of design, about how you go about designing an IP. Are you designing a game that's going to have a shelf life, or are you designing a world and a character that's going to live forever? Because of Nintendo and where they came from and when they started, timing was everything, right? So Mario was a very simple little character that ran around in Donkey Kong, and that character could grow and grow and grow, but they've never really, they never tried to turn him into something he wasn't. Whereas you build something like The Last of Us, The Last of Us has a shelf life just because it's specific characters in a specific world that's kind of bookended. And so you can't really spin anything out of that very well. So,
No.
there's a whole art to creating IP, but it all comes down to that. What
Well,
do I
you're
associate PlayStation with? I associate them with Naughty Dog and Insomniac and whatever those games are
and
today. So Spider-Man and Wolverine and Last of Us and that sort of stuff. Whereas with Nintendo, it's Mario, Pokemon, Zelda. It's characters
yeah.
from decades ago.
Oh my gosh. And you're gonna be a wrap because like Nintendo is like so good at like finding the new blue ocean to take their characters and exploring a different like so my current game of the year, the Pokopia, like, oh, what if you just had a game where you're building houses and Pikachu just hangs out with you? Like, oh my God. Like where was
It's
this game like
awesome. That game is
it's like
amazing.
10 years ago. Like this is the most no-brainer thing in the world. People want to hang out with their Pokemon in a virtual sim. Now we gave it to you. Now that's like a franchise in of itself. It was a natural extension of Pokemon. Didn't have to be a
Yep.
battler. Just put them in a friendly environment. Story's a little dark, but you get past that. And a little dark story, but you get past it. The core loop is you're just hanging out with Professor Tangler or
Definitely
whatever.
handled.
Yeah, a little bit dark, but anyways, that's just the magic of they're really good at it. What does that mean for Microsoft? They own IP, so we'll see what they do with StarCraft. We'll see what they do with World of Warcraft or Warcraft as an IP. Blizzard is a treasure trove of IP. Like they're good at IP over at Blizzard, right? They got their and
Oh, yeah.
Overwatch's IP, right? And it's having a bit of a comeback of sorts, right? So they're good at IP at Blizzard. So maybe Microsoft learns from their own asset over there and like, how do we do what you guys did?
And they've got, Halo should go back to being Halo. Just make a really great campaign with PvP shooter on top. Gears of War, I think Gears of War as an IP isn't great. It was always kind of a bit broforcey back in the day, but hey, if you're going to do that sort of thing, today is probably the day to do it.
Elder
But
Scrolls.
they haven't got much beyond that. Elder Scrolls, I mean, that's kind of, it's PC stuff, and it's kind of there. It's never going to be a massive, huge, Nintendo style breakout IP I'm going to buy a platform for, because it's on the PC, above everything else.
I mean,
But
yeah,
I
like
mean, I we're being harsh on Microsoft more than anybody
Well,
else.
Skyrim
But
came out of nowhere,
they're
by the way.
kind of the ones who have lost their way. Focus on the game. Give me a system-selling exclusive game, and I will buy your system. It's as simple as that.
well, that's Elder Scrolls 6. That's the next Fallout game. Like, what they could do on a system if they wanted to make it exclusive to then drive people to play it. Like, you want to play Fallout, 6 or 5? Here. For at least
But I
first
think,
year.
to my point, I don't think Fallout is an IP that will drive that. That's just singing to the choir. You need something that says to Sony fans and to Nintendo fans, you need to buy this platform.
You got the TV show. I don't know. It's
like
IP.
season 1.
It's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? IP is in the eyes of the beholder. If you like that IP, you like that IP, right? And if you want to talk about like wide funnel, like the amount of people it's going to hit, I don't know. It depends how good the game is. I mean, you make a great Fallout game, and you might see a bunch of people getting into Fallout IP and watching the series. You gotta make the next Elder Scrolls could be freaking amazing, like Skyrim was in 2011. Now all of a sudden, everyone's an Elder Scrolls fan. Like,
But is Elder Scrolls going to be massively successful without PC and modding? You know, it's
That's a
that
good
kind of
question.
equation. You know, it's that kind of equation. You know, I need
to me, it was originally.
why is there not an Uncharted game on Xbox? Why? I mean, you've got Ninja Theory. They're very, very talented developers, but they went off and did this crazy Hellblade 2 thing that took them 8 years. Why were they not doing your Uncharted game? Super commercial, super, you know, middle of the road story. You know, everybody can, you know, everyone can watch Uncharted and go, okay, I get it, complete. It's Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah, I think I agree and disagree. Like, I think I don't want to I played Morrowind on my Xbox, so to me, like, I got into Elder Scrolls because of my console, because I didn't play it on PC. So like, I disagree, but it's very RPG centric. So I give you that. It's not for everyone. It's very much a 100-hour plus RPG. And then I look at like Blizzard, and like, to me, it's like, what else are you gonna do with StarCraft? Like, you're not gonna bring an RTS to console. Are you doing anything with this IP? Like, that world is ripe for almost anything. Like, I would be interested in an open world game as a StarCraft, like as playing as a Marine or playing whatever. Like, that's interesting to me. So I'm curious what Blizzard does. They can make console games like Overwatch. Yes, it's PC, but it did come out on console too, and so they can do these sort of things. Yeah, I don't know. Your point about where's your single player amazing, like, why aren't you making 007 First Light? Like, why didn't you guys get the rights to do that, right? Like, and make the Bond game for your system? That's a great question.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on and having this chat about exclusives. It's been super great to see you guys again and chat, and I hope we can do this again. Like, hot take really fast, like 1 year prediction, or like prediction of where things can go for Microsoft in a very short way. Like, do you guys feel comfortable trying to do a prediction?
About what, man? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. Where's everything we've talked about? Where's Microsoft heading? Like, a year down the line, like what are they going to do? Be fun to just come back to a year from this.
I think they'll follow what Colin was saying in terms of ads.
Yeah, they're going to have something next year.
I think if they want a successful next platform, they've got to find some exclusive games that nobody else has.
It's all about ads.
I think they're going to do ads. They're the only hyperscaler without a significant ad presence. Microsoft as a company, gaming gives them the avenue to do it. I think whether they're successful at it or not, it depends on what they charge. If they charge for ads, it's going to fail. That's my opinion. But if they come out with a free version, I'd want to watch that one and see how it grows, because I think that would grow like fire. So that my thing is ads. They're going to do add something. Whether it succeeds, I don't know, because it depends on how they roll it out.
All right. Well, Richard Browne, Colonies, thank you for coming on. This has been a great roundtable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.